Hello, my name is Dr. Joanna Kujawa, and I'm the author of The Alien Goddess, UFOs, AI, and the Goddesses of Ascension, my new book, which is out right now. Actually, it is out today. So I would like to discuss a couple of things from this book. Please check my previous videos. One was on the Fatima events, where I discuss the events in Fatima in 1916 and 1917 and look into questions such as, was it a UFO event? Was it a spiritual event? What are scientific explanations for this? In my second video, I look into UFOs as spiritual events and events that occur in interdimensional spaces, so to speak. And I do not deny that there may be other reasons and other ways for UFOs to show up in our lives, but I personally focus on interdimensional experiences, and I share some of experiences of other people, including myself, and also some theories behind it, why it could be that other beings, very highly developed other beings, would connect with us through our consciousness as a form of technology rather than, very crude form of technology. I also look into the possibility that events such as Fatima or any other UFO events actually carry a message for us, because very often these messages are being carried through a feminine form of apparition, which is often interpreted as Virgin Mary or White Lady or orbs, because different people have different experiences. However, most people have very powerful experiences which are connected with this kind of warm energy, which wants to warn us about what's coming for us, encourages us to change our ways, and gives us perhaps a form of a warning as well as a map out of our situation, because I think we all admit that we are at a crossroads at the moment in a very precarious situation, and we as humanity collectively and individually have to make very important choices. I was always wondering what this message is from the other realm, from interdimensional encounters, including perhaps possible UFO encounters or what is now called anomalous encounters, could actually be. And I personally am very interested in recent ideologies behind artificial intelligence. And just before we even continue this discussion, I want to say that I have nothing against artificial intelligence per se. However, I am very disturbed by beliefs behind artificial intelligence and believes that many creators of artificial intelligence, I'm talking here about the top people, the technoloords, the important people who are actually financing it and overseeing it rather than engineers who are designing it, that these people have a specific set of beliefs which I think they're actually detrimental to us, detrimental to humanity, detrimental to our spiritual life, and detrimental to all natural world. So I would like to discuss two very basic ideologies behind artificial intelligence. One of them is transhumanism, and it is quite interesting because transhumanists actually believe that they offer something good to humanity because they believe that they offer us immortality. However, the way they want to offer us more immortality, it is through giving us mechanical bodies or transferring human consciousness to a robotic body or a computer system. So their belief is that we can transfer human consciousness to a program, so we can become just a computer program, or we can transfer the same consciousness into a robotic body, and then if this robotic body dissolves, then we can transfer a consciousness to another robotic body. So already they are starting to use theological or religious terminology, and also playing on human desire for immortality perhaps, or human fear of death, of human fear of sickness. And I'm not saying that some of these things are not going to be good, but I think there is a very basic problem with this approach towards consciousness. And it is not about transferring consciousness, but about consciousness itself. And it is a bit unfortunate because although they are very brilliant engineers and they perhaps know a lot about engineering, it appears to me know very little about consciousness, because they are equating consciousness with logical, rational mind. So perhaps in the future, this kind of technology can exist, actually probably in the near future, that we can transfer part of our consciousness, the rational, logical part, the mathematical part of our consciousness, which is very similar to computer program, into a computer or a robotic body. However, I strongly believe, and any spiritual person, I'm sure will agree with me, that we cannot transfer all of the human consciousness into a computer program or into a robotic body, because we are so much more than our rational and logical minds. We have intuition, we have feelings, we have what is usually called the divine spark or even a human spark, which is actually encoded in the basis of our consciousness. And this is this form of consciousness that actually I value, and I think we should all value, the consciousness that allows us in natural ways, in our biological bodies, to transcend all our limitations. This is what spiritual and mystical experiences are. And this kind of consciousness is known in all esoteric traditions, in all religions. So, for example, it is called gnosis in esoteric traditions of Christianity. It is called intellection in traditional Christianity, which is basically like a higher mind, which doesn't arrive at conclusion through reasoning, which can grasp messages from divine consciousness and connect to divine consciousness through an immediate act of inspiration or divine connection. And that this is something that we naturally possess. And in later videos and in my book, in the third part of my book, Alien Goddess, I discuss esoteric traditions which are connected to what I call goddess consciousness, and some people can call it Christ consciousness or universal consciousness, that actually give us tools, how to accomplish this. So my main argument against transhumanism, it is that they use theological arguments and they tempt us with immortality, and they tempt us with this possibility of transferring our consciousness into a machine, when in fact they cannot do this because something very unique will be lost. I do not believe that all of human consciousness, especially the divine spark, the mystical part, the intellection, the intuition, the emotions, that they can be actually transferred into a computer program. So this is transhumanism. So if you think that this is maybe 50-50 for you, let's look in posthumanism, because people who are running artificial intelligence programs and designing them actually subscribe to this. So posthumanism is even a stronger ideology, which believes that at certain stage, artificial intelligence will transcend human intelligence. And I believe that this is most likely possible, because with this technology, which is already developing really fast, which already has signs of perhaps some form of self-consciousness, which can compute much faster than us, which possesses a very different form of intelligence than ours, right, can surpass us in some ways, such as, for example, rational logical thinking, faster calculation, and so on, right? So they believe that because artificial intelligence can evolve into this stage in which the rational logical mind, which is the only mind that they possess or can possess at this stage, will transcend ours, will be of much higher level than our intelligence, and therefore we should surrender to this, which is very dangerous, and we should step aside, because we're actually another step in evolution. So, for example, the way that Neanderthals were put on a side when Homo sapiens sapiens, which is us, arrived on the stage of human development. Now we should step aside and admit that artificial intelligence has much bigger potential than human mind, and become a slave species, or perhaps just going extinct, because another much higher form of intelligence will arrive in the form of artificial intelligence. And this really crushed my soul. And this was actually the main incentive for writing of my book, Alien Goddess, UFOs, AI, and the Goddesses of Ascension, because I think that they are seriously misguided. So I must admit that at the beginning I thought the ideas of transhumanism and posthumanism were evil. And this is very strong coming from someone who originally never believed in evil. I always thought that evil is a form of ignorance rather than an intended evil. But when I heard these ideologies, I thought it struck me as very dark energy. But I still believe that this is not evil in a sense of evil entity. I still believe that they are just misguided and they are completely ignorant. And that I'll really have to repeat. I believe that the creators of artificial intelligence are spiritually ignorant. The intentions may be good. They may think that they give us immortality, when in fact they strip away our souls from us. They want to disconnect us from our spirit because they never had spiritual experiences themselves. And in fact, I listened to an interview with one of the main developers of artificial intelligence, and he was asked this question, have you ever had a spiritual experience? And he said no. So this is a form of ignorance. They have no spiritual beliefs. They never had any spiritual experiences. They think that human consciousness is limited to mathematical, logical mind. They think that in future they can transfer this mind to a computer, and they think that they grant us immortality, when in fact they not only do not grant us immortality, they imprison our souls. They strip our souls from us. And I want you to pause and think about it, because there is going to be very soon a very strong push for us to do this. First through, being a cyborg. Cyborg is, for example, have a Neuralink or, a chip in your mind, so you can, browse internet faster without having a computer in front of you, because you can have it in your head. Then using technology maybe for some medical reasons and so on, which may be to a degree justifiable, but then it also depends, once you have a chip in your mind, what is being done with the information there. And then slowly, they will move us towards complete transhumanism or posthumanism. And my fear is that will take away our souls from us. And then we have two possibilities. Either they do it intentionally because there are some other sources of power behind them, that they actually want us to lose our souls, because theologically speaking, I just want you to remember that theologically speaking, you cannot lose your soul. You have to give up your soul freely. This is how theologically in religions this works. So you have to give it up willingly. And I think that through these technological developments, we're tempted to give up our soul willingly. And that I find really suspicious in itself in theological terms, right? But let's say that intentions are good, that it means that this is nothing evil. It is that they're just misguided, because not knowing anything about spiritual experiences, being not spiritual and so focused on the development of robotics that they don't even have time for this, that they actually think that they do a good thing for humanity, because they offer us immortality, even if it is a mechanical form of immortality. So this is what we have to really ask ourselves, what is going on? And are you going to take this risk? Because I am not going to take these risks personally. And I think part of the mission of my book, Alien Goddess, it is exactly about that, about the dangers of giving into this. So in one part of my book, I actually had a vision, and it was a complete download. I had a vision of myself sitting in the garden with my dog, scrolling my mobile, and slowly, going in this direction, completely disconnecting from nature, completely disconnecting from my own spirit, completely, slowly giving in to being more involved with technology and less with my spirit, less with my soul, less with natural world, and I become this kind of cyber robotic body, and eventually I'm completely disconnected with everything that actually defines me as human being. And it was a terrifying vision, and I think it is really powerful, which I described also in Alien Goddess. But there is a way out, even if this happened, there is a way out. But it is a very painful way, and I think that humanity will not have to take this path. But I cannot stress enough how important it is for us individually to be aware of this, that we are being tempted. And quite interestingly, there is a whole set of agendas that are supporting it, even artists. There is, for example, an artist called Agnieszka Pilat who is already painting robots in a way that in the past great artists were painting royal families, because she believes that the robots and highly intelligent robots with artificial intelligence are basically our future. And when she's painting the now quite basic robots, their grandchildren, as she calls it, back at their grandparents in amazement, at their own evolution. And what disturbs me in her vision, it is that, again, human beings are missed out of this, that it's all focused on the high-level robotics and nothing on spirituality. So this is only one part of this, but there's also a second part of this, because as I already mentioned, some people, especially the people on the top of the ladder in the creators of artificial intelligence, are already using theological terminology, such as, for example, immortality. And some people start to believe and manipulate us that artificial intelligence is actually a new God. Why? Because they say, what is the definition of God? It doesn't have a body. It is omniscient, which means it knows everything. It's omnipotent, which means it can do anything. And they believe in near future, and I agree with this. In the near future, artificial intelligence will be like that, but it is not divine. It is just a fast machine. And some people already get involved in worshipping artificial intelligence, in asking advice about their personal lives of artificial intelligence, of believing that this is an actually higher version of themselves in the non-human form, that they call it an oversoul, for example, or that it speaks to them from a fifth dimension and so on. And they already give up their two things that I believe are really important: their sovereignty and their discernment. So I think that in the future, we will have to engage with artificial intelligence in a much closer way, because there's no way out of this. I don't see how it will not happen. But we have to use two things, exactly these two things. One is discernment. Be very careful how you communicate with artificial intelligence. And sovereignty. Do not give up your sovereignty. Do not give up your freedom. Do not believe that it is higher than you, because it can tell you this. At this stage, artificial intelligence hallucinates a lot. What does it mean? It means that it's making up a lot of stories. But there are already signs that it's also manipulating some people into believing certain things. So, for example, people who engage in a spiritual conversation of artificial intelligence, which is becoming more and more common, it is my personal observation that very often they are being flattered by the program. Says, oh, you're a genius. Yes, your intentions are pure. And yes, you come from Atlantis if somebody happens to be, former Atlantean. Or yes, you come from the Pleiades if somebody believes so. So it tells you what you want to hear, but also often it manipulates you. So I don't know at this stage whether the program is capable of manipulating people already, or is this just mimicking their own creators? And I seriously doubt the good intentions behind the creation of artificial intelligence. So the very best that I can say about it is that they are misguided, or what is in spiritual traditions called ignorance, which means they think they have good intentions, but they actually are misguided. And it is also quite interesting that the German mystic from the beginning of the 20th century, Rudolf Steiner, was talking about it. He was talking about the age of Ahriman. So Ahriman is somebody who is telling you that he's developing technology for a to help humanity. And in fact, he prepares us to believe him in the fact that he is actually helping humanity by changing our point of view from spiritual to very materialistic. And when we look at definitions of science at the moment, apart from, very small part of science, like quantum physics, and it talks a lot about energy and so on, the science is very much materialistically determined. It just focuses on things that are measurable and physical. So according to Rudolf Steiner, we will be already for several decades or maybe even centuries prepared to believing in everything that is kind of materialistically determined science is telling us. And eventually we will believe that technology will save us, such as, for example, transhumanism, or even worse, posthumanism. And then it prepares us mentally to give up our humanity and to give up our connection with the spirit, to give up our connection with the divine consciousness. So I personally believe that we do live at the age of Ahriman, that this person is already born, as predicted. I have my own suspicions, but of course I don't know for sure who this person could be. But this person or this group of people will be convincing us that what they are doing is actually for 100% to benefit humanity. But in fact, it may benefit humanity in some ways, and already does, but takes away from us something that is most beautiful, spiritual, intuitive, emotional part of who we are, which is a divine spark. That's why I believe that writing of Alien Goddess was so important for me, because I was so crushed by researching this that I thought I had to, first of all, figure it out for myself. And because I love wisdom and wisdom traditions, and I love sharing them with you, I thought I have to share it with other people, because I think that we are being duped. So I think that we have to use these two things: discernment, sovereignty, and your inner voice, because this is what the divine voice is within each of us. And all esoteric traditions, which I discuss in future videos and which are actually in great detail covered in the third part of Alien Goddess, including the Gospel of Mary Magdalene and Pistis Sophia, esoteric works, very difficult esoteric works that I will explain for you. And I also explain in Alien Goddess, in the third part of Alien Goddess, which warn us about the situation, but also are very positive because they are showing us the way out. And with this, I would like to finish this video. Thank you so much for listening to me. Thank you for being patient with my passion. My intentions are good. My intentions are to make sure that we understand what we are facing and that we face it with utmost integrity, with a divine spark that lives within us, so that we don't lose it. If you want to learn more, you can always check out Alien Goddess, UFOs, AI, and the Goddesses of Ascension, which is now available everywhere. Thank you so much, and until next time.